1 in 8 Americans have an addiction to drugs or alcohol. Over 50% of high school seniors admit to having used drugs. The estimated annual cost to the American public in relation to drug and alcohol abuse is $250 billion. Nearly 9 million adults in the U.S. with mental illness also have a substance abuse disorder.
Welcome to KLEAN Radio, the show about addiction and how to overcome it, featuring celebrity and professional interviews with people in recovery and how successful treatment has brought remarkable changes in their lives. With your hosts, Andrew.
I got married for the third time, and the over-under between all my friends was 15 months.
And Judah.
Well, it sounds profound if it doesn't make sense.
I guess so.
That's what I've learned about profoundness.
Break free of those habits that are controlling you. Life is waiting. Come and get it. KLEAN Radio starts now.
Welcome to KLEAN Radio. My name is Andrew Spanswick. I'm here with my co-host Judah Friedman. We're here to talk about addiction recovery issues. And we have a great show tonight. Thank you for listening. Hello, Judah.
Oh, hey.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
What is treatment?
What is treatment?
That I think, we constantly talk about treatment, and we were discussing this over the weekend, that most people do not know what treatment is.
It's amazing, yeah, that people think it's just, this, like AA maybe, or
whatever. No, or celebrity rehab, or the commercials they see on TV with passages.
Well, it's unfortunate, like a lot of the reality TV you see these days, like Intervention, whatever, they don't really show the actual treatment process. And they show the before and the after, and it looks really amazing, but you don't really get an idea of what actually happens. And I think for a lot of people, it's scary, the idea of going into treatment. So,
is that why you set up your treatment center in the middle of West Hollywood?
Well, that's a whole other thing. I mean, for so long, treatment centers have been isolated way outside of city centers. I think that stems largely from sort of the history of mental illness and people being institutionalized in state hospitals, which were often well away from the population, not in my backyard kind of thing.
Right.
And even with West Hollywood, when we opened up KLEAN in West Hollywood, we had that sort of same reaction at first from neighbors who didn't want to have drug addicts moving into their neighborhood. So, there's still a lot of fear around mental health and even drug and alcohol.
Well, it's funny because growing up in Brooklyn, I had no idea there was a whole rehab world. When I had to go to rehab in New York, I went to upstate New York. It was by Sing Sing Prison. Mm-hmm. Very depressing drive on the bus down there or in the car down there. And it was out. It was like 3 hours outside of New York. And basically the second you were out, it was like getting out of jail. You had somebody come and get you, and that was it.
Well, there's been two sort of groups that have always dealt with substance abuse. You've had, the Christian right and the temperance movement and prohibition. And people that saw addiction and drug use and drinking as a sin, and therefore, if you didn't sin, you would be fine.
Right.
And so the idea of treating sin was supposed to be done by religion. And then you had the medical community that just saw addiction as another form of psychiatric illness. And it wasn't really until fairly recently in, the scope of time, probably about the 50s, that the recovery movement of treating addiction as a separate illness really started happening. And probably really didn't gain popularity until, the big book started coming out, and then eventually Betty Ford, brought women into the fold.
And the Smither people in New York.
Right. And now you're seeing this fold back into where people are saying, hey, you know what, addiction isn't this isolated, separate sort of illness. It's actually part of both psychiatric and social, and, you get this holistic view of body, mind, and spiritual issues.
You're listening to KLEAN Radio Live. I was reading an interesting article this week about, there are a lot of people that are driving right now listening to us on the internet, listening to us on the East Coast, listening to us all over, that are really struggling, that are going through a really rough time right now. The economy is in the tank. I mean, it's coming up on holiday time. You're looking at your bank account, and I was reading this article about how drinking is really picking up, and use of drugs is picking up.
And we just saw it in the supermarket. Yeah. Judah and I were in the supermarket just before the show.
Which we do every week.
Yeah, to get our donut and our drink. But anyway, we're in the supermarket, and it's amazing how every end of every aisle has been converted into a little liquor store.
Right.
Like they've brought out the holiday vodka and the holiday rum. And
well, they've replaced what they do in Halloween with candy.
Right, with
They're
alcohol.
just with alcohol now,
Yeah.
and it's constantly I hear I was in your center on Saturday, and one of the girls was asking, "Do you still think about it?" And I said I don't. I mean, I've been sober over 13 years. I don't, but when I first got sober, I noticed every liquor store. I noticed every alcoholic beverage everywhere. I noticed the prices.
Right.
And it was almost like it was calling my name.
Huh.
And I think as people are struggling right now, they're going through these things. And if you're struggling, it's okay. Give us a call. We could talk about it. There are a lot of different groups out there, whether it's going to therapy or whether it's a bunch of different things.
People don't realize also this is actually the time that a lot of people go into treatment.
Yeah.
The summer, people tend to be away from their family and isolate, and people that are drug addicts and alcoholics tend to isolate and stay away from people that care about them because they're embarrassed and they feel shame. But as they're brought into family situations for holiday parties or just meeting with a family or whatever, it becomes apparent that there's a problem. So we actually see an upsurge in this time of year of people being identified by their family members as having a problem. So if that's happening and occurring, we'd love to talk about that on the air as well.
And another thing, I was listening to another radio thing the other night, and some guy was calling up, and he had lost his son to addiction, and he was talking about. It was pretty cool listening to this father talk about the dangers of marijuana, of marijuana, I'm like from the 50s, and ganja, and how it's, it's so potent these days. People think constantly, oh, just legalize marijuana. Marijuana is so potent these days. It's probably up there with most Class C drugs.
Yeah, they just did a study. Dr. Cohn at UCLA just published a study saying that the potency of THC has gone up from 4.1% to over 14% in the last 10 years alone. And it's only going up as as they continue to cross-pollinate and breed these special strains that have higher and higher levels of THC. And for those people that don't know, THC is the active ingredient in marijuana.
And it's sort of
actually one of them. There's actually several, but it's the main one.
But also he was talking about, I don't know if this is true, you'd probably know better than I do, that they have hormones in them because the way they're growing them, obviously, there are certain other things they're putting in there to make this pot so potent that it's got to be dangerous.
The other thing that people just don't realize is that you're actually smoking something unfiltered, and there's a lot of tar. There's a lot more tar in marijuana than there is in cigarette smoke. And then also,
what do they say? One joint is the equivalent to a pack?
Yeah, pretty much. And then people are smoking large amount at one time and then holding it into their lungs, which actually isn't really necessary, believe it or not. Most of the THC is actually absorbed very quickly. And so all they're really doing is holding smoke in the cilia and the bronchial tubes, like the little areas in their lungs. And that actually causes a lot of damage.
Okay. You're listening to KLEAN Radio Live. You're in the studio tonight with Andrew Spanswick, founder and CEO of the KLEAN Treatment Center. That's KLEAN with a K.
Yes.
And me.
And Judah.
Yeah, writer.
The Judah,
writer.
Famous for the Judah dance.
Yeah, famous for the Judah dance. And, I just think it's coming up on holiday time. It's a lot.
Are you going to have a special holiday dance?
I'm performing it. I'm getting ready for my special holiday dance. Patrick is teaching me a few of his own dance moves. Patrick, our best cameraman in town, and his cohort Steve. They actually have me practicing the next couple weeks.
Right. And people can see us live streaming on KLEANradio.com.
Right. They can find us on Facebook. Like us at KLEAN Radio. That's KLEAN with a K. And it's we constantly get these emails and, from people that, because they don't feel comfortable always talking on the air about the issues they're going through. And I know a lot of people out there, this is a very uncomfortable topic to talk about. As far as we've come in society, people are still scared to say, I need help.
Right.
Or I'm sick. Whether it's for fear of losing a job, fear of losing a family member. But here's the thing. If you don't get help, you're going to lose them anyways.
And it's not just with substance abuse and addiction. It happens with, I had a friend this past week that died of cancer. Right. And I was surprised that he didn't tell anyone. He was sick for a long time and didn't tell anyone. And then I found out 2 weeks after he died that he had died of cancer and that he didn't want anyone to know. So there seems to be a lot of shame or a lot of, issues with people that are sick in general, not wanting to share or burden other people with their problems. And, that's where treatment and treatment professionals really come in handy. They're people that you can talk to and it doesn't have to involve the whole family necessarily.
Yeah, you're right. And that's why we do have, it's all confidential and all that type of jazz. And just feel free to call in. The number at the station is 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. 888-539-2980. Call us with any issues you have. We're a show about sobriety. We're a show about, after you get sober, which is what we think is the greatest thing in the world, is watching people after they get sober and the amazing lives they've lived.
Are living. Yeah.
Are living. But one of the things we constantly talk about is that after you get sober is relationships. I often say the 12-step groups aren't a program of monogamous. You don't see many marriages occurring or long-lasting. And it's one of those things. Listen, as long as you're sober, you're not, but it's... And we brought in tonight a couple relationship experts.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting show. Yeah. We have two really wonderful guests, and we're going to be discussing... relationship issues as they relate to addiction.
Yeah, and their names are Orna and Matthew Walters, and coolly enough, they're married.
Right?
Yeah.
If there's anything that makes you an expert, I'm sure being married helps.
Yeah, Orna is a life purpose coach. I have no idea what that is, but we're going to find out. And the professional, I don't want to say that, and she's been featured on Fox 11 News, NBC, and the Daily Candy.com. Matthew has studied hypnosis, NLP. I have no idea what that is, but you'll explain it to me. He's therapeutic imagery. Wow, you guys have studied a lot of stuff. And so let's welcome in our guests tonight, Orna and Matthew Walters.
Welcome to the studios.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Really happy to be here.
You're Orna, right?
I am Orna.
So Judah is stumped by your qualifications.
Yeah.
So why don't we start there? What exactly do you guys do? When you say, professional purpose life coach, purpose coach?
Well, basically, I'm trained in a system where I can see what somebody's life purpose is, why they're here, or who they are at their highest and best self. And so as a life coach, I coach people to live at their highest and best self. And I was doing that business for a very long time. And then Matthew and I, when we came together, we started our business called Creating Love on Purpose. Mm-hmm. And so I still use a lot of the tools that I used in my coaching practice, specifically in relationship, and it works out great.
That's great. So is there a purpose to life?
Well, everybody has their own purpose about who you are at your highest and best self. So purpose is not an occupation. But in order for you to have fulfillment in life, then your occupation must be in alignment with that life purpose.
Yeah, it's interesting because I find a lot of people that we treat with substance abuse issues, they have identity problems. They haven't figured out who they are. And then if they do begin to figure out who they are, then they don't really have a true sense of purpose. They're like, oh, now I sort of know who I am. Now what's my purpose? So I find it very interesting that you're working on that sort of stage of development.
Well, along with our life purpose, we also have life lessons. So we have these challenge arenas that we're here to master. And as we master those challenge arenas, then we're lifted into our purpose.
It's like American Gladiators of relationships.
Right?
That'd be cool.
Do you think
can you have Andrew and I on? Can you have us two put us in outfits and just
beat each other?
Yeah, so what does that mean, though, exactly? What is the arena? Where is the arena? Is that...
Where is the arena?
It's metaphorical.
Is it metaphoric? Okay, so it's actually not an arena. I thought it would be pretty cool if you guys had an arena.
Yeah, the relationship arena.
Yeah.
Where you can duel it out with pads and everything.
And you guys work together?
We do. We do all of our coaching together.
Mm-hmm.
We call it 2-on-1,
right.
Because it's, our client and then the two of us. And it's nice because we get to bring sort of the feminine and the masculine ideas and energies and ways of being together with our clients.
So you specialize in hypnosis and NLP. What's NLP?
NLP, neuro-linguistic programming.
Mm-hmm.
Most people know who Tony Robbins is. He's probably the most famous person who uses NLP. Mm-hmm. NLP is really about looking at neuro, the brain, how it works, linguistics, how we communicate, and programming the programs we run. And NLP basically says there's really nothing wrong with you. You just have a bad program running.
So it's kind of like systems theory.
It's very much systems theory. The two guys who created NLP, one was a linguist, the other was a computer programmer. So they were very much about what they did was they studied three famous therapists. They studied Fritz Perls, Virginia Satir, and Milton Erickson. And they used systems ways of thinking about, well, let's look at the bigger picture about what they're doing, and then we can create a whole way of being and a whole series of techniques that come from that.
So this is more like there's two divides really, right? There's the cognitive behavioral sort of aspect, like people thinking about how they think and then acting out and trying to change their behavior, right? And then you have sort of more the psychoanalytic branch of psychology and psychiatry, which is more what people think of Freud. But that's also evolved into a whole subset of different therapies that involve how people can think about what's going on subconsciously with them or what motivates them, and then dig deeply into their issues, and then hopefully come up with resolution, and then have more positive ways of acting and living their lives.
Well, one of the ways you want to think about it is on the subconscious level. We're not trying to screw up our lives, right? We're not trying to mess up our relationships. We're not trying to become addicted to drugs and alcohol. We're trying to get love, security, approval, acceptance, something that we need, right, in order to feel like we feel safe, we can survive in the world. We just, when we talk about addiction and everything, we learn a behavior that works for us initially.
Right.
And then down the road doesn't work anymore. It actually does the opposite. It creates big messes. And when you work with the subconscious, then you can find out what are we really trying to get? And why don't we teach you a better way of getting that as opposed to that old technique which doesn't work anymore?
You know, a lot of what I see with teenagers and young adults in college is that they end up using drugs and alcohol because it disinhibits them a little bit and allows them to engage in a relationship. And then they become dependent on that disengagement and that disinhibition and the use of substances, and they then begin to incorporate that into their personality and think that that's themselves is the use of drugs and alcohol to allow them to have a relationship. And then the only relationships they've ever had have been when they've been using drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. We like to say that you are not your behavior. Right. You're not the sum of your thoughts, your behaviors, and your feelings. You're actually something bigger and greater than that. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Where would you be?
I would be in a lot of trouble.
And when you can start to disengage your identity from your behavior, then you can take a lot of the judgment out of what's going on. Right. And I think that's something that comes up a lot, especially with what you guys are talking about with addiction and everything. Judgment's such a huge part of that.
Well, my sponsor, my one of my 12-step sponsors, had me take out certain words out of my vocabulary, which was an amazing benefit and help to me instead of bad. He wouldn't allow me to say bad anymore because the connotation from that obviously is bad is from the Bible or and so he'd have me change a lot of words, which was like it set me free.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a perfect example of how we use language to describe our reality. And when you take certain words out of your vocabulary, your reality begins to change.
I don't know how my mother would feel about that as an English lit professor.
Your mother would not feel very good, and she's definitely going to.
She's going to Facebook about that next week.
You're listening to Clean Radio Live. We're in the studio tonight with Orna and Matthew Walters. The number here is 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. 888-539-2980. You're listening to Clean Radio. You can find us on Facebook at Clean Radio or live stream us. So if anybody's interested in knowing what our guests look like tonight, go to cleanradio.com right now and live stream us.
Yeah, right at the bottom of the page, you can click and watch live. Or next week, about Tuesday, it gets posted on the regular cleanradio.com website, and you can watch it for the rest of your life.
And we also have some exciting news. We're going to be in another market next week in San Diego.
Yeah, we're going to be picked up by another station. It's great.
So very exciting.
Going out of 2.
And we have in the studio tonight with us our relationship experts. So that's basically the safest way to say what you guys do.
That is the safest way, sure.
Okay.
We like to live a little dangerously,
because you guys, there's so much. You guys do so much amazing stuff. But so one of the things we were talking about before you came in is that in the 12-step groups we've noticed a lot of people do have problems with relationships after they get sober. Whether it's in the beginning when they get sober, they're just doing maybe the one-night stands, or then they get into relationships that are extremely unhealthy. And I mean, I'm constantly hearing stories of people that are just going through, and then you want to just say to them, okay, what's going on there, Orna?
Well, when we're born, we are like this pure entity of love. We're pure love. We come out knowing how to love and how to let ourselves be loved, and that give and receiving of love has no veils or any inhibitions around it. And then we are raised by people who are inherently flawed. And so we learn that love on some level is conditional. And
Andrew's mother's perfect, by the way. Sorry.
Judah, you're not going to get back in with my
Mrs.
mom.
S, you're...
Your grammar's too bad.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Sorry.
So that's quite all right. So, we basically then start to take on a belief about who we have to be in order to receive love, right? And so, especially around addiction, what happens is that, especially when somebody becomes sober, now they're learning a whole new way of being in the world. And so a whole new way of relating with another person can bring up a lot of the things that actually triggered them, that, where they wanted to check out and use whatever substance they were using to check out, because that connection could be, can stir up a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, or a lot of expectation. And so a lot of the work that Matthew and I do is about looking at, well, what's no longer serving you, and how can we break apart the old story so that that old program is no longer running, and so that you can be running something that will get you what you desire. When if you look at it this way, we all start to create around love relationships what is familiar to us, right, and what is familiar from our family of origin of how we learn to receive love. And we will choose what is familiar over and over and over again, even if there's this huge disparity between what is familiar and what we desire. And with people who have gone through some kind of abuse, it's really obvious, right? Like somebody's grew up in an abusive home, and then so they pick an abuser, right? And so this huge disparity can happen, or it can be a small disparity. It can be that, when we were little, we were told, oh, well, you're too sensitive. And so we were taught that our feelings really didn't matter, right? And so we get in a relationship with somebody who's just, doesn't really, value how we're feeling. So in order to break the story apart is a process in taking down that story.
So what is it better to deal with? What would you say? Obviously, there are a ton of people in the relationships that aren't working. So do you see a lot of people that are trying to change, that they don't get into the bad pattern again?
Yeah, that's usually the people we work with. For example, most of our clients are divorced, or they're getting into their late 30s, early 40s, into their 50s, and they just haven't been able to put together that long-term relationship and make it last. They're blocked in some way, and usually it's a pattern. And that's the thing, when you sit down and look at it, I'd say if this is an issue in your life right now, it'd be useful, just get a piece of paper and write down every significant relationship, and write down the patterns in those relationships and just see what comes up. One of the most common things we see is this disparity between, say for women who, on the one hand, they choose that emotionally unavailable guy, right? The one who just won't commit, who just won't ever be there for them in the long term. And then on the other hand, they then when they get sick of that, they swing back over to that really sweet guy who loves them, who does everything for them.
And then they're bored.
They're bored. They feel no passion.
Can I give you my tagline? And I've given this to women I've said this to women for years. This is a Judah advice. This is the best advice I've ever given to somebody in my life, and it's this:
boy.
Look for a man and find his bad boy. Don't find the bad boy and look for his man, because they don't have it.
I love that. We actually support that. That's great.
And it's the God's honest truth. And I'm happy finally somebody supports
somebody agrees with you.
Wow, a Judaism that works.
Yeah.
We'll take it. I like that one. I like that a lot. And I think a lot of what happens is that we start to try to manifest what we think we can have. There's this whole idea of write down 5 things, and if you get 3 of those 5, you're good. Well, if you're thinking about spending your life with somebody, A, make the list longer than 5 things, and B, you should get the majority of them.
So what about romance and love? It seems like it's awfully calculated to make a list.
That's what I was just going to ask too.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's put it this way.
And by the way, let me tell you, I've made a list.
Yeah.
And my current wife had nothing on the list, none of them, and it only had one thing on there.
But he's been
she
married,
didn't have that. But I've been married
happy
3 years.
for 3 years.
Oh,
Amy.
Maybe it's a separate list in your head.
It was a different list, right?
Yeah. Well, what we always say is people are very intentional about their careers. They're intentional about their health. But we expect that love is just supposed to happen. Like the accident of love is the romantic idea.
Pretty Woman is a myth.
Pretty Woman is a myth, right?
And it's
all
a
the
dangerous
Hollywood myths.
And it's a dangerous myth.
You know, the Hollywood myths are the most dangerous because, you know, think of the Jerry Maguire myth. You complete me, right? I mean, that's an addict's dream right there, right? You know, find somebody else who fills in all your holes and, you know, there's a codependent relationship.
Sure.
And that's not going to make for a lasting relationship. I mean, you know, we're brought up that, you know, anything that we want, right? If you want to be, you know, fit and in shape and healthy, you know, you got to work at it and be intentional. If you want a career and you want to be successful, you got to set goals. And there's this whole system for being successful in like every area of life, except we all are sold this ridiculous myth from a very young age that somehow we're going to bump into the love of our life at the supermarket. And not only is that going to magically happen, but then you're going to magically know how to make the relationship last.
Hey, I met my girlfriend in the emergency room. So maybe
a psychological term is that first transference and countertransference. You know, people have this sort of, you know, they put onto the other person what they want them to be, and then slowly they find out that's not who they are.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, that's what a crush. That's why I always say crushes are so dangerous, is because when you have a crush on somebody, you're putting
all your own projections.
Right, it's everything that's not true. And then finally one day you either date your crush, sleep with your crush, and you're like, oh my God, who are you?
You know, true romance to me is curiosity. It's when you're really curious about another person. You want to find out who they are. You want to find out more about them. Right. And that is also very attractive. You know, when somebody's like, wow, you're really great. Tell me more about you. It's like,
that was a little awkward, but
well, yeah, I didn't mean you. It's only because, you know, I'm looking into the mic and there you are. You know?
You're listening to Clean Radio, by the way. The number here is 888-539-2980. 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. We're in this studio tonight with Orna and Matthew Walters.
You know, I want to jump back into sort of this a little more serious topic. We were talking about trauma and abuse, and you work a lot with women, and you know, I've seen a lot of with working with women myself that are attracted to people and they get back into abusive relationships, that they're actually looking for that feedback loop of the person to get angry and abusive towards them.
What's a
because
feedback
that's
loop?
Something that reinforcement, okay. Right? So the woman will often provoke and antagonize the man to get that abusive reaction because they think that that's love.
Well, when we are abused from a very, you know, from being young and being raised by people who abuse us, there's a whole entanglement between love and pain.
Right.
And so there's it's that faulty program. That faulty program is running around what love is. And so there is a way to dismantle that program.
Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
Well,
none.
So part of it is
that costs you money, right? You got to go to the website.
I mean, none.
I mean, the quick way is to use tools that access the subconscious and help heal that story. Right. But on a sort of a bigger picture, because you know, not everybody out there sort of needs to grab onto something, and it's really a process of valuing self, of learning that you
building self-esteem,
self-love, self-value, all of those practices, you know, and we've got a great technique which is really about expressing emotional authenticity. How do you tell your truth to somebody without getting into blame, without getting into shame, without using all that you language, right? How do you then value your feelings by expressing?
Especially getting back to addiction, addicts or people with trauma, there was never a premium that was ever put on truth.
But also, if you're using and you're an addict or you're drinking, or even if you're just newly sober, you don't really know the truth often, right? And it's confusing for you, and how you feel about things and what you say and what you do are often, you know, there's that disinhibition of using. People just say whatever they're feeling or thinking, whether it's rational or not. And when people get sober, they tend to find that what they thought was important before isn't important once they get sober. So do you see people come to you that obviously have substance abuse problems, and how do you deal with that?
You know, most of what we deal with, trauma and abuse tends to come up more often than substance abuse. Right. People who are in that cycle, that pattern. You know, but one of the things that's interesting about the substance abuse pattern is where the user gets to, which is, and this is this thing of testing, right? You know, they get you to buy in to this idea. If you love me, then you will, and they set a threshold, right? You'll put up with whatever I do. Right. And then, you know, ultimately then when you stop putting up with that it's a way of them saying, well, see, you didn't really love me all along. And it's this whole cycle that gets put into an abusive relationship.
Well, we're actually already going out for our first break. I can't believe this show's flying by today.
Yeah.
But you can call us at
888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. We're in the studio tonight with Orna and Matthew Walters. You're listening to Clean Radio.
Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs? Call Clean Treatment Center at 888-601-6040 for a free drug test and consultation. A treatment advisor is available to help you administer the test and answer any questions you may have regarding treatment and more. We are here to help. Call us today at 888-601-6040 or find us online at cleantreatmentcenter.com for your free drug test and the start of a promising future.
Now, back to Andrew and Judah.
See, we got a fellow dancer in the studio.
We got the When We Got High song going.
We got Orna getting down. Because I Got High. Now,
Because I Got High.
Yeah, by Afro Man.
Yeah, I used to have the poster.
It was great. It was a
They
great
actually
song.
on the poster for this, it was from a music store when they still had music stores, and they actually airbrushed out the joint in his hand.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was
well,
really
there's two versions of the song. There's the explicit version. Remember in the old days when you actually would buy iTunes and they had one explicit version and one regular version, and then you'd accidentally buy the clean version. And I used to buy this song by Scarface called My Block, and it would be like, boom. You know what I mean? Like they'd bleep it out. I was very disappointed. I don't even know why I'm
the
telling
trauma.
That
we're
was
going to
trauma.
have to get into that right away.
By the way, you're listening to Clean Radio. The number here is 888-539-2980, 888-539-2980, 888-539-2980. Call us up with any problems you might have. Even if you're a little scared to talk to us on the air, we could talk to you off the air. I just wanted to, because I heard you guys we're in the studio tonight with Orna and Matthew Walters. Years ago, I got set up on a blind date. Somebody was stupid enough to set me up on a blind date. And the problem with blind dates, sometimes you actually eventually see the person, so it's not blind anymore. And let's just say the girl was a little pleasantly plump, and there wasn't this instant attraction. And the next day, these people wanted to set me up. Wanted to know how the date went, and I was like, well, it wasn't great. There was a little, and I kept on trying to say ways of, a million ways of saying, well, I wasn't attracted to her, until finally I said I couldn't take her voice. And they go to me, well, why didn't you just say that right away? You can't change a voice. And I realized after that day that I don't even know why I'm telling this story. The reason I'm telling this story is because I heard you guys talking in the green room about the stupid reasons people break up with each other. And
or don't have a relationship.
They just find these idiotic toothpaste, the toothbrush wasn't right or something. So
well, people do put up all kinds of walls, but the truth is that the one thing we all want is love and connection. All the songs, all the movies, all the poems, that stuff can't all be wrong.
Right.
Well, it can be, but it's not. You really believe that, though? I mean, do you believe some people just aren't meant to be in love?
No. I think that's a story that somebody's bought into.
That hasn't
That's a
fallen
belief
in love.
system. Exactly. I mean, think about it this way: a pessimist is nothing more than a disappointed romantic. We all start somewhere with a positive idea of what we have, and then, as we all know, life throws stuff our way, and it sets up roadblocks, and we make mistakes, and people break our heart, and all that stuff happens. And the problem is we make choices based on all those painful experiences. We say, well, I don't want to feel that again. I don't want to feel that again. I certainly don't want to go through that experience again, so I'm going to make sure that never happens again. And we limit ourselves in our choices in that way. And we end up with, well, it's good enough. I mean, I was in that relationship. Well, she likes me, I don't like me, but she likes me, so this has got to work somehow.
Do you guys think monogamy is a natural human state?
I'm going to say
it's I don't know if it's a natural human state or not. I mean, we've been out of living in the natural world for centuries. It is a choice, though.
Right.
I mean,
we don't uncivilized. We're in a civilized world.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we don't judge whatever anybody's choice is about how they want to live their life. I mean, everybody finds love in the flavor and the way in which they find it. We don't say that love has to look like our relationship.
So, do you think there's a such thing as sex and love addiction?
Definitely.
Oh, definitely.
And so, what's the line between monogamy and sex and love addiction?
Well, first off, I think when we hear the term love addiction, we want to throw out the word love, because love doesn't belong in that it's like an oxymoron. Like love next to addiction doesn't go together, because love is limitless with limitless expressions. So the real true, what we talk about is creating a true soul partnership, and that kind of love has nothing to do with what the person who has a quote love addiction is searching for. So it doesn't fall in that. But you know, when we're talking about sex addiction, absolutely. I mean, think about it. When you have sex, there's all kinds of great chemicals that come rushing out of your brain and flood your body, and that feels great.
Right.
So
a lot of people think that sex addiction is just completely hoo-ha. But I've seen people where they're actually not able to function on a daily basis because they're just constantly seeking out sex. They're online, you know, with their instant messenger beeping every 5 seconds. They can't go to work. They skip work. They, you know, miss important meetings. And it's very destructive to their life. And, you know, for a long time, I just thought it was sort of a joke, you know, but clearly... there are people that suffer from compulsive sexual behavior.
Bill Clinton,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, any kind of behavior that keeps you from feeling whatever that emptiness is that you're trying to get away from, right? And sex is a great one to keep you from feeling that. I mean, for that time that you're with that person, you feel so connected. Like Orna said, that you know, those drugs, the endorphins, the oxytocin, everything's flowing through your system. It feels great.
Right.
You know, even to the, you know, somebody sitting at home looking at pornography, they're having that same chemical rush.
Hey, thinking about
system.
it right now, I'm getting
So,
it.
but isn't some of this partly judgment? And I hate to be so sort of, you know, crass about this, but, you know, you guys are saying that there's a way to have a healthy relationship and get all these positive rewards, endorphins, and a great relationship and whatever. And then there's all these unhealthy ways to have them. So what is the secret sauce?
What's the secret sauce?
The
Funny you're asking the secret sauce with sex.
What does it look like?
So this, okay. Well, what it looks like, I think, is a better description, because that's a way to get there, right? Which is when a whole and complete person comes together with another whole and complete person, you can come together to create a true soul partnership, and we call that the 360 relationship, right? Because it's two whole people. You're not looking for that other person to complete you. You're not looking for something of them to fulfill within you. When you are self-fulfilled, in a sense, right? You can come together, and it's a choice. That's when it becomes an actual choice. I'm choosing to be with this person because they inspire me, because life with them is better than life without them, you know, because together we can grow exponentially.
Well, let's look at it this way. You know, in any 12-step program, you go one day at a time. Today, I choose not to drink. Today, I choose not to use, whatever it is, right? In a sense, what we're saying is today, I choose to love. I choose to tap into love. I choose to love my partner no matter what's going on with them. I choose to love myself no matter what's going on with me, right? You know, we all have our issues.
And is that the NLP?
That, you know,
the way you
you know, that's
neuro-linguistic program.
It's certainly
think
part
I'm
of
gonna
it, you know,
remember
in terms of a technique that'll help you get there. But it really is about making a choice. I mean, you're in a relationship with somebody, and they do that thing over and over again that just gets under your nerves, just gets under your skin, just bugs the crap out of you.
What if your spouse snores?
Well, you can go to the store, and there's actually something you can put in your nose to help you with that. But that's a whole other commercial, right? You know, that thing, usually that thing that
it's called
bugs
a pillow.
us. Just put that over your head, honey. That thing that bugs us so much about that other person that we're with is, if you look deep enough, it's really something about you. It's really, there's something in you that you don't like, that you can't stand about yourself, or it's something that somebody did to you when you were a child, right? You know, your father used to talk to you that way, your mother, whatever. You'll even hear that in arguments. You're talking to me just like my mother did.
So if my wife was an alcoholic and actively drinking, and I didn't like that, there's something wrong with me?
You're not liking it is your responsibility.
Right.
Whether you choose to stay with her or not is a whole other question. But how you feel about it is your responsibility. I like to put it in a real simple language, right? If somebody has a problem with me, it's their problem. If I have a problem with somebody, it's my problem.
So if I had, let's go with this little scenario.
Hypothetically.
Right? So a listener out there, their spouse is drinking, and they don't feel good about it, but they love that person. How should they be thinking about it in a positive way?
Well, it's not so much thinking about it in a positive way. It's about where's the responsibility. So I think oftentimes what happens when we're in partnership with somebody who is an addict, and using, there are these, we hear a lot, right? Well, if you loved me, then you wouldn't, fill in the blank. You wouldn't drink, you wouldn't, whatever. And really that person is being who they are. It doesn't matter who they were in relationship with, they'd be doing that behavior. That's their behavior, their choice. What we're saying is it's about responsibility. So a great way of communication for somebody in that situation, for example, if somebody's listening now and they're like, well, I'd like to be able to talk to my spouse about the fact that, he or she is still drinking, then you can share from how you're feeling about it. You can say, I'm afraid, I'm worried, I'm scared, I love you. So it's not about what the other person is doing. It's not you're doing this and you're, being bad or being wrong or all of that language, right? And so it's about communicating from that place of what is each our own individual responsibility, which is how we ourselves are feeling.
Let me just say, a lot of MFTs that I talk to, marriage and family therapists, who actually study a lot of the same things that you guys are talking about. And one of the things that often comes up is that in marital counseling, sometimes it's not about fixing the marriage. It's actually how are two people going to separate and not be married in the least harmful way.
Well, I mean, we've been hired to do breakup coaching, so I guess that's,
really?
that's a similar...
So you get into that. So sometimes somebody might come to you and you're like, you actually need to...
They're like, how do I get out of this relationship?
Right.
You're like the breakup specialist. You're like a cool tag.
And what most people do is they try to create a scenario, right? They pick a fight.
Right.
Let me create a situation in which I can be mad at you and make you wrong,
right.
And therefore that's my way out of this situation that I'm no longer happy with or comfortable with.
We often say to people, for like about what we do, we say, well, do you want to stop dating like a teenager? And this whole idea of, looking for an excuse to break up with somebody or to separate or whatever that might be is, again, back to that teenage behavior. Like just because it isn't...
Not taking responsibility for your own feelings.
Right. And also trying
and your own responsibilities.
And the thing is it's okay to say this isn't working for me. It's okay to say this isn't working. It's time for us to move on. That's really okay. And oftentimes that is the best solution.
We've got some calls stacking up. Why don't we go ahead and take a call? Let's take line 2. We've got Michelle from Santa Monica. Michelle, you're on the air at KLEAN Radio.
Hi. Thanks for this topic. It's great to hear it. And I had when I recently was married, I had found out just very soon after I was married that my husband was addicted to pain meds and Vicodin, and you just said something about the separating. That might be a teenage way, but we did separate, and it did help us. And my question is, I feel pretty good, but I do question a lot, like rebuilding that trust back. And what is the best way for both of us to move forward and not have those trust issues where I feel like I have to dig through the stuff for, how if he's acting a certain way, if it has something to do with that.
I like what Michelle's saying. She's saying that, trust is the hardest thing to rebuild. Someone can have a substance abuse problem, you can have a relationship problem, but then how do you get that trust back?
Well, I think most importantly, it's important to recognize that trust doesn't come on a dimmer switch. You either trust someone or you don't. So if you're making a go at the relationship, you have to invest in the relationship, and that means you have to trust your partner. You have to trust and take them at face value. Now, if there are behavioral cues to something that you think might be deeper, again, it's about expressing how you're feeling. So you can say, when you cross that bridge, right? So I think when you're talking about how to rebuild trust, what we're saying is communicate and having a really clear path to communication and to communicate in such a way that inspires your partner. So, we learn when we're kids, we learn by modeling our parents, and we also learn from our partners. So if you can start sharing how you're feeling and encourage and inspire your husband to communicate how he is feeling with you.
I think also making them feel safe, right? I mean, one of the problems with drug and alcohol abuse is that people tend to lie when they start if they relapse.
Yeah.
Right? So they relapse, they feel incredibly guilty, they don't want to tell the spouse, so they start lying. And then they're back into that cycle of not being trustworthy. But yet they're really actually trying to save, ironically, the relationship by lying because they don't want to deal with that. How do you open up that or get past a relapse?
I mean, I think one of the things to do would be to make it clear that if he has the room to come to you to say, look, I've relapsed, I need help, that the door is open for him to come and talk to you about that, that him using is not necessarily the deal breaker. The deal breaker is him lying about using, right? And that'll really help with make him feel like, oh, you do trust him because you actually trust him to come to you if there's a problem.
And that she understands about addiction and that relapse is often a part of addiction.
Right.
I also liked what Orna was talking about. It's like you're either in or you're out. And I think that's a big thing a lot of people don't do. It's like if you're going to go in, jump. Don't go in sort of half, with
don't go in looking
open.
for the problem, right?
What do you think, Michelle?
Very, very helpful. I think we've rebuilt that way, and I haven't really found myself. It hasn't been an issue, and I think it just sometimes comes up in my mind of things I'm worrying about, and so I didn't know. Maybe I just need to hear it.
Have you been going to support groups?
I went to one very early on, and then I didn't after. So that was one of the things I was thinking maybe I should.
That would be a very good suggestion. Obviously, you have groups like Al-Anon. You have therapeutic people.
We have a bunch of calls coming, so I want to try and get a few more in. Michelle, please check out KLEANradio.com, and there'll be more information there.
And we're going to have a link for our guests.
And you can definitely check in with them as well. Okay, thank you for calling.
Thanks again.
Yep. Let's go straight to our next call. We call on line 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Line 3.
They're there, but they're not saying anything. Hello, we're on KLEAN Radio.
Hello.
Okay, I guess not. Okay. Maybe we'll wait.
And if anybody's interested in finding our guest tonight, we're in the studio tonight. Okay. You're listening to KLEAN Radio. That's Clean with a K. We're in the studio with Orna and Matthew Walters. We're going to put up all your information on our website so people like Michelle can actually just get the link. And
we got the caller back.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go back to line 3. David, you're on the air with KLEAN Radio.
Hey, hi. I got a question. Someone who's new in sobriety, how long should they wait before they get into a relationship?
Great relationship.
The $1 million.
The $1 million. How long do I have
question.
to wait?
Hopefully it's not too long.
Well, it's what we like to say is it's always good to practice, and your practice space is the dating space, not the relationship space. And we have a practice or really something that we really encourage people to do, which is what we call date to discover. And the date to discovery process is putting the discovery process on yourself, not on finding your ideal mate. So when you can go out there and start paying attention like a detective and being curious about how you are responding. When you're attracted to somebody, can you speak up about how you're feeling? Or when you are not attracted, is it much easier for you to sort of relax and be yourself? What happens? Because in the dating process can bring up a lot of clues about what your old patterns have been that you'd like to break. And you can start in practice and going on this date to discover process. There's no time that you have to really wait for that. And I know that some, recovery centers say you should wait a certain amount of time. But really, when you start dating in this way, you don't really have to wait because you can take that new sober you out in the world.
I actually like the engagement. I like the idea that, why live in a bubble? How long have you been sober, David?
18 18 months.
Oh, that you're
18
perfect.
months.
You're golden. But you're both of you are basically saying it's like, don't buy if you don't know how to drive stick, don't buy a Porsche stick. Buy like a Dodge Datsun to learn it on. It's like a starter pistol is what you guys are suggesting.
Is that fair to the other person though? I mean,
yeah, that's a good question.
Well, I mean, as long as you're upfront and honest about what you're doing. If you're not going, dating somebody, making them think you're getting into a relationship with them when really you're just going through the process of figuring out yourself.
But how many? I mean, I always say the great woman lie is that I don't need a relationship. That is the greatest woman lie I've ever heard. And it's like every woman is walking around saying, "Oh, I don't need a relationship." And basically what they're saying is, once you have sex with me, that's you will never want anybody else. And I think it's very hard to be honest. I think even when you're honest, and that goes to the part you can't worry about what other people are thinking. All you could worry about is how honest you are.
Yeah. I mean, people are going to tell you who they are by what they do, right? They can tell you whatever. They can, try to convince you of whatever, but their actions tell you everything about who they are. And when you're stepping up and you're sharing your feelings and you're being authentic and you're telling your truth, and if somebody, doesn't respond well to that, that tells you who they are.
David, do you have anybody in mind?
Oh no, last girl was like she had 30 days clean and it just wasn't working out.
That you might want to stay away from. And I always say this to people that I'm sponsoring. It's basically like the reason I don't suggest getting into relationships right away is because it's taking you away from the program. It's taking you away from getting as much help as you could possibly get. I'm saying relationships. I'm not saying dating.
Well, it takes a while just for the brain to rewire. Right. So if someone's been actively using alcohol and drugs, often it's about really a year before their chemistry biologically is sort of back to normal.
It's like, why not just go to the psych ward?
Yeah, and it's good to let people have some go to the psych ward. Oh my goodness.
Well, somebody with 30 days is basically like, it's like what, they're one level up in the psych ward?
Yeah,
they've got their shoelaces back.
Wow.
So basically,
David, I've been there.
David, we're saying you should start, and any girl that you even, whether there's a huge spark or not, if you just find her remotely interesting, you should go and ask her on a date. Just start going on dates.
Have fun.
But what about, here's David. He's sober 18 months.
Amazing.
Right? And he's looking for a relationship, someone he can relate to. He's going to be attracted to someone that's only sober 30 days. Right? Because there's probably more there. All the dysfunction of his own addiction
health is attracted to
is
health.
right there, right? And so what about a sober person trying to date someone that isn't sober?
Which is me right now.
But has a healthy relationship with drugs or alcohol, if there is such a thing.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
These guys have such a great relationship, by the way. Our guests were in the studio tonight with Orna and Matthew Walters. I love how they point to each other, but it's not him pointing ever. It's Orna pointing like this. She's got the pointy finger directing the traffic.
He points. He's more subtle than me.
Yeah. And you guys have a really.
I usually grab her leg. Well, let's use us as an example. I've been sober for 9 years, and Orna. She'll have an occasional drink. She'll, she has a healthy relationship with alcohol, and
he doesn't let her come home those nights. No, I'm just joking. No kissing on those nights. No,
she's a cheap date. One drink and she's drunk. So,
it's true.
It's true.
9 years later, they're married.
So it really is about your comfort level. I mean, if it's somebody who's going out and drinking on a nightly basis and they, quote unquote, have a healthy relationship with alcohol, it's probably not a good idea, right? But if it's somebody who likes to have a glass of wine now and then with dinner, I think there's a way you can work through it. It depends on how comfortable you are with where you're at.
And I think what you were talking about is about what is David about, right? What is David's story for himself? What is it that he, David? What are you looking for in a relationship?
Just a relationship. I've been loaded all my life and just used to have hostages, but now I want someone long term. But trial and error. I've been having problems.
Are you enjoying yourself, David? That's the most important thing I think too. Is are you having fun?
Not really. I mean, it starts out okay, but then I can't cope with it. It's not working out.
I think a lot of the fear is loneliness. I mean, many people that I see that have problems with alcohol and drugs, not only is the process of their addiction led to isolation and loneliness, but they have a deep-seated fear of being alone. They don't want to be alone. They want that relationship, and they're desperate for it. and they're looking for it. And that's why the fellowship of AA and other things is so attractive to so many people that are addicts. How does, is there really like a lid for every pot? Is there hope for people to get a relationship?
I love their smiles. Yeah. They're just like these, like you two are like, you guys should be like brought around everywhere. You can be like, is there a reason for living today? Them two shaking their heads like, of course.
Definitely.
But how does David know that, he can, how long can he go without having a relationship or beginning to have a relationship and still feel a sense of hope that he can have a relationship?
Well, I think what David, what you need to do is you need to start thinking about what do you really want that relationship to look like. Instead of just going, wow, I want to be with somebody because I'm alone and I'm feeling lonely and I need companionship. It's like, no. What in a bigger picture? How do you want to be in the world? How do you want to be with that woman? How do you want to be in relationship? What do you want her to be like with you? And then, when people don't live up to that, move on.
David, can I ask you a question? Do you have insurance? I'm curious about this. Do you have health insurance or anything like that?
No, not right now.
Okay. The second, because you guys are great. Somebody like David could really use. Do you guys give seminars? How could David? Because David obviously wants help. How do we get him that help?
Well, there's a number of different ways to work with us. We do private coaching, and we have a book. It's not perfect for David because it's geared towards women, but we have a product called Your Soulmate Blueprint, which actually looks at what the pattern has been, and then you move towards bringing in your beloved. And I think where Matthew was going is great for David. Start really looking at how you want the relationship to function, and don't look from what you believe is possible. See, this is the mistake we all make. We all sort of taught like, oh, be reasonable, and I'm telling you to be unreasonable. Like literally draw up, write it out. Like how does the relationship function? What do you do on the weekends? What do you do during the week? How many times a year do you travel? What does she do? What do you do? What does your life look like with this other partner? And I mean, throw in everything. What is that big vision that you really want to create? Now take that vision and start this date to discover process, and you can start weeding out people right away, because if they don't start matching into some of those core things that were in your vision, they're not the right person. And yes, there is a lid for every pot. Absolutely.
I like how you put the food analogy.
Of course. I got to go on a
David,
diet on
thank
Monday,
you so much for calling us.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
So we got to wrap up.
This is a great, amazing show. Do we not get to somebody?
Yeah, there's a couple calls. Well, we have our long-term fan.
Yeah,
we can throw him in there real quick.
Sonny, you got 30 seconds.
All right, Sonny, you got 30 seconds.
Well, first of all, one quick thing, and I'll take it off the air. Could somebody get addiction off of Alpha online, and if so, how?
Yes,
Sonny.
Yeah.
That is a great question.
It's a process addiction.
Sonny is one of
Sonny's our long-term fan. He calls in every show, waits
Sonny,
for half an hour.
I promise you next week we're going to get back to you. We're going to be on in San Diego next week, Sonny, on 760, so it'll be easier for you to listen on the radio.
As well as 980.
As well as 980.
You guys just got on KFWE. What the heck happened?
No, we're going to be on both.
No, we're going to be on both.
Oh, well, that's really weird. I have never heard of that.
The show is growing.
What do you mean, Sonny? You listen to ESPN radio all the time. They're on 100 different stations, Sonny, and I always hear you on it. Sonny, we're going to get back to you next week. We'll talk to you. I really want to thank our guests for coming in tonight. Orna and Matthew Walters. Your website is download for...
No,
our website is creatingloveonpurpose.com, creatingloveonpurpose.com. And this last summer, we hosted 25 top experts in love, dating, sex, and intimacy. And you can get the whole series. So you can go to loveonpurposerevolution.com. That's loveonpurposerevolution.com. And there's a whole series with 25 experts that will really help you get the love that you most desire.
And we're actually going to link you on KLEAN Radio. And as you guys were great guests, and I would love for you guys to come back on Valentine's Day. If that's possible, you don't have to say yes to me now. I know I'm like the guy right now that had a great date and right on the first date says, when are we going out again, and ruins it. And then she never hears from me again. But we would love if you guys on Valentine's Day could come back and talk about this, because it's a lonely time for addicts on Valentine's Day.
We're out of time.
And we're out of time.
It's been another great week on KLEAN Radio. We're going to be in San Diego as well as on 980 here in LA. Next week, and we really encourage you to go to KLEANradio.com. You can also go to KLEAN Radio /Facebook, and Clean Radio, or Facebook/Clean Radio. And
you can do it.
I can do it.
Yeah.
And anyway, leave comments and be involved in the show. We got a lot going on, and thank you so much for listening.
Love.
Judah, you got a last word?
Yeah, love. It's all about love.
All about love.
Yeah. Healthy love. Talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to Clean Radio. You can tap into Clean Radio 24/7 at cleanradio.com, featuring a live video stream of the show, the best of Clean Radio, and even watch Andrew's appearance on Dr. Drew's Life Changers. If you or someone you know is in need of addiction assistance, you can call this number right now, 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040.
Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs? Call Clean Treatment Center at 888-601-6040 for a free drug test and consultation. A treatment advisor is available to help you administer the test and answer any questions you may have regarding treatment and more. We are here to help. Call us today at 888-601-6040 or find us online at cleantreatmentcenter.com for your free drug test and the start of a promising future.